Well, hello there, you faithful few, and welcome back to DMS Adventures, where we are under no illusion that we are not risking electrocution. Yeah, I'm both excited and nervous to make this video because I'm going to attempt to make a solar power box. So if you don't know what I mean by a solar power box, it's like a Jackery or EcoFlow or a Blue Eddy, just a box that has batteries inside that you can use while out camping as a power source to be able to run things like a DC refrigerator or even just like an AC fan that you would plug into a wall. Why am I attempting to build one? More on that in a minute. So this is going to be a 3 or 4 part video series for reasons which will become apparent in a moment. So buckle up, you faithful few. It's about time to start an adventure of another sort. In our first episode here today, we're going to go through all of the components that we're going to need in order to build our power box, or the what. But first up is the why. Why am I actually building one of these? Well, I went looking for a new power station just because the one that we have, the Jackery 1000, just isn't quite big enough for our needs. Unless there is sunshine outside, we can't even run our ice cold cooler with one side as a freezer for any more than about a day and a half. Therefore, I was looking for something with a little bit more battery capacity. Reason number 2 is, I don't know if you've seen some of our videos that we'd shoot back in the backyard tree. We have a shed back there, and I would love to have some power down there at the shed, but I really don't want to run any power lines from the house on down there. So solar seems to be the thing now. So I was gonna slap a couple of solar panels on the roof back there and then wire the shed for electricity. Then reason number 3 is I'm just kind of a tech nerd. I've always loved the idea of solar, that free power coming from the sun just fascinates me, and I kind of wanted to learn how to do it. I've been putting in my time on YouTube videos and reading some articles to brush up on how solar power works in general, and then how to build a battery box in order to hold that energy or store it. The reason for building a battery box is I can kill both of those birds with one stone. So after I put the box together, I will leave it down at the shed, and that will be the primary source to store the energy that comes in from the solar panels, and then that will power the shed for lights. There's a bug zapper I want to have running down there when we're hanging out around the campfire. I want to be able to run a cooler down there, and then also be able to charge up batteries for our lawn equipment. So when we're here, at home, not out on an adventure, it'll be down there at the shed, storing that energy for us, providing some power for the shed. But when it's time to go camping, we'll be able to disconnect everything from down there, roll the box on up here, stick it in the truck, and take it camping to have a lot more power for a weekend outing. All right, so that's the why. Now it's time to get into the what. So I'm going to show you the components that we have to put this power box together. I'm so excited to get this started. I have been thinking about this, planning it, researching it for a couple months now, and I've gathered all of the components that we need. Think I've gathered up the knowledge, and it's time to put it all into work effect. Put it all together, bring it home. So let me show you what we're going to be working with. So with my years of backpacking research and such, one of the things that I learned is you always want to buy your backpack last. You got to get all your gear, know how much room you're going to need to fit it all in. And I absolutely did not take that advice when I picked this box. So really what I should have done was got all the components, see how big they are, and then pick a box that was appropriate to fit everything. No, I kind of just made the best guess I could on things, researched the box, found out its dimensions, and then went ahead and purchased one. Then I'm just gonna hope for the best that it all fits. I've run some preliminary checks and I think we're gonna be okay. This is the box that we picked to house all the components. Everything's gonna be in here or on here. So this is from a brand called Keter, not entirely certain how to pronounce it, but There's a few reasons why I picked this box, and let me show you what those are. First up, it's got wheels. That'll make it easy to bring it up from the shed up to the truck, and then if we have to unload it, just to be able to wheel it around and get it wherever we need it. It also has a telescoping handle. Again, making it easy to move around. This lid is super unique among toolboxes. Check this out. Is that cool or what? That's just a different way to do a lid, and I'm going to take advantage of that for some of the things that I want to put in here. So there's another compartment up here and a compartment over here with these removable bins. It uses kind of like your standard drawer glides in order to slide in and out here. Then the locking mechanism is pretty slick. And then you can actually just get a padlock or something and stick it right through here to lock it up entirely. But to open, just a little twist, and there you go. Next up, what's going to be storing our power here in the battery box are two 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate batteries. These are from a company called Dr. Prepare, and they are mini versions, so they're about as small as you can get for a 100 amp hour battery, and that's definitely what I needed to fit inside the box. I do want to note that these Dr. Prepare batteries were the smallest dimensioned mini 100 amp hour batteries that I could find on Amazon. Then all that stored power is going to be sent through this 1200 watt pure sine wave inverter from a company called Synthesis. You know, like synthesis, only with the sun. Clever. So the power will come from the battery to these terminals here, and then it is powered up. Flip it around, and here are your AC plugs for running any AC appliance that you want out of the box. Also got a USB plug right here. Don't think I'm going to use that. And then this is a plug right here for a remote control. And the purpose of that will become apparent either sooner or in a later video. How's the power going to get from the solar panels into those batteries? Through the Victron solar charge controller. And it's smart, mind you. It is equipped with Bluetooth, and it can transmit all kinds of data to an app on the phone. This one is a MPPT controller, multi-power point terminal or something. 100 volt max and 30 amp output. Got the battery terminals. This is where the battery positive comes in, negative, and then PV stands for photovoltaic, which is where you connect your solar panels to. And this is something I'm not going to use. It's for outputting all of the data to a display type of thingy. Then we're using a Victron Smart Shunt. This thing basically monitors all the levels and things in the battery itself. Just hook up the negative side of the battery to here, and then all the loads onto this side. And so all the current running through this thing, this will record and again send to an app on the phone. Then in order to run our DC items, such as some fans, some USB chargers, and a heater, some things that we'll get into, it is a DC fuse block. I've already got the fuses sized for the things that we're going to be hooking up to, and I have a right angle lug here also, just so I didn't lose it. We're going to use a couple of bus bars. These are just a way to distribute the power evenly and not end up with a bunch of wires stuck to the same terminal on the battery. So this is just a cover. You can just take this off and it gives you access to the terminals. Here we have a Bojack 125 amp fuse. This is going to connect right onto a battery, the battery terminal. And we've also got two 40 amp DC breakers. One is for the DC hub terminal, and the other one is for the solar charge controller. Did you faithful few know that one of the best ways to actually learn something is to teach it to someone else? It's also kind of why I like doing this. As I'm explaining all this stuff to all of you, I'm kind of setting the neural pathways So with everything being stuck inside of a box and electronics to boot, it's gonna get hot in there. So we have got some squirrel cage blowers in order to get some good air circulation within the box. Real quick explanation, this here is a small 12-volt heater with kind of like a computer fan on the back and ceramic heat element here in the front. And one of the things about those lithium iron phosphate batteries is they will not take a charge if you get below 32 degrees. And since it's going to be out there in the shed for a fair amount of time, in the winter here in Indiana, it gets pretty cold. And so it does have a low temperature shut-off protection on the batteries. So if it does get that cold, they will shut down and it won't damage the batteries. But I got this little heater to hopefully keep it just warm enough in there so that they don't shut down and they can keep taking a charge even if it's cold. I'll be honest with you, I'm not too sure that this is going to do it. I've done some tests. It does kick out some heat, but not a ton. I don't know. I may have to insulate the box, put a big insulation thing over top of the box in order to keep it nice and toasty in there. But we'll see. So with those fans and that heater in there, you don't want them running all of the time. So we got a couple of thermometer switches here. So one is for the heating and one is for the cooling. So if it gets a little too hot there in the box, this one will trip the fans on, and then when it reaches a decent temperature, it'll turn the fans back off. And same here with the one for the heater. That way you don't have them running constantly, draining your battery. So next up are a couple of DC control panels. One of these switches is going to operate the external lights. Another one is going to operate the internal lights. Then down here, you just got a couple of standard, cigarette lighter type of plugs. Then on the other side, this will be a switch for the whole fan system. In case like during the, winter, you don't necessarily need the fans on. And then during the summer, you don't necessarily need the heater on. So there's just a switch that'll be able to control that. This is just a voltage meter, tells you how much voltage is in the battery. And down here is the plug for an Anderson power pole connector in order to hook in the solar panels. And the reason why I went with the Anderson connectors is because when we do take it camping, we already have two Jackery 100 watt solar saga panels, and those use these Anderson plugs. So I'll be able to plug it in down at the shed, unplug it, take it camping, and then plug the solar saga panels in here as well. Why are there two? Future expandability. So this here is the remote control for the inverter that I mentioned earlier. So what we're gonna do is, when this is down there in the shed, this will run from the box over to the wall just inside the door to the shed. And when we walk in, we can actually just flip this switch here and it will turn the inverter on. And you don't want the inverter running all the time because it'll do a constant power draw just to keep things running. So this way the inverter can be off most of the time until you actually need the power. And then this little cord here is what will go in the box, and this will connect to the inverter. This will stick out of the box, and then this end of the cord will just go in here like so. This guy right here is a kill switch. We will be able to just shut all the power off to the entire box if we need to work on anything. The power from the batteries will have to go through this switch first, and then it will run to the bus bar and power things. So if we need to work on something downline from the batteries, boom, we can just shut that off and we know there is no power going to anything. These here are some fancy little 12-volt puck lights that we will just use to kind of embellish the box a little bit. Just drill a hole. These will set down inside, and these spring-loaded clips here will hold it in place. Also got a couple of these small 12-volt marine lights. These are going to be used to provide some illumination inside of the box. Here are two little USB charging dealios. These are going to go up in the area where those removable bins are, but you can see we've got two USB-C plugs, one USB-A plug in each of these, and they also have their own button to turn them on and off. Then our main initial cables are going to be a 2-gauge wire. These wires are going to run from the battery to the battery because we have to hook both these batteries up in parallel, which I'll show you later. And they'll run from the battery to the switch, from the switch to the bus bar, then from the bus bar to the inverter. All the other connections will be able to use some smaller gauge wire. Then I just want to jump in real quick and say, if you go to do something like this, spending a lot of time researching wire gauge and you know, what kind of amperage all different wires will handle, that is definitely something you want to spend some time on. I've spent a lot of time on it. I sort of kind of get it, but I don't know that I sort of kind of get it enough to pass it along to you faithful few. I will flash this chart up here that I found that was pretty helpful in determining what size of wire you need for what amperage load that you're going to have coming through those wires. In order to access the power from the inverter that's inside the box and get that power outside the box, we have these jobbies. Basically like extension cords, but on one end, you've got a place to plug things in here. And we've got two of these. When it's in the shed, one of them will be running power to the shed, and the other one will be for anything else we may need to plug in while we're down there. Also, wanted to be able to charge the batteries by just plugging it into a normal 120 outlet without having to open up the box. So in order to do that, we have this little guy that will go on the outside of the box. I can just plug an extension cord from the wall into here. Then this will take it over to a charger that will then clip onto the positive and negative terminals of the battery. Then we just got a bunch of different things that you need for the project. We got some heat shrink to put around the wires and the lugs. Got some Wago wire connectors to kind of do some wire management there inside the box. Got some Anderson plug pieces here. See, you got the black and the red, and then the part pieces that you crimp down there. Then a bunch of other multiple gauge wire connectors, just to be able to hook up a lot of those smaller DC wire items, like the USB and the fans and the heater and all that kind of small stuff. Then a bunch of different lugs and heat shrink for those larger wires. Then of course, I got a bunch of different screws, bolts, nuts, washers, different kinds of tape, electrical tape, double-sided Gorilla tape, duct tape, you know, anything that I need. A bunch of different tools you'll see used throughout the project. If you have any questions about anything that I'm using, just pause the video and ask me down in the comments. Be super happy to give you an answer. So you may be wondering how much all of this costs. Well, I kind of stopped keeping track after a while, but suffice it to say, it would be a little bit cheaper to just go ahead and buy a Jackery or a Bluetti or something like that. Unless, of course, you have a bunch of wire, all the tools already, a bunch of things laying around, odds and ends, an extra battery or toolbox that you can use. That would greatly reduce the expenses. But I watched one YouTuber who labeled this kind of expense tuition, because that's kind of what it is. I'm investing in myself to learn something new. How's that for justification? Well, in next week's video, we're going to start exploring the how. We're going to get into drilling holes, cutting wire, making hundreds of decisions, and I hope you can join us for that. So I just want to thank y'all so much for watching, and you all have a great day.